Hello everyone, and welcome back to Conspiracy. Today we'll be discussing something that I mentioned in my purple streetlights video. You can watch that here. And Blind Curb in the comments said that they thought this would be an interesting video, so thank you Blind Curb for the recommendation. Today, we're talking about government officials talking about UFOs or alien encounters. Some government officials all over the world have already confirmed that aliens exist, and there was an official government UFO panel recently discussing it. With all that said, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy. Let's get into it. UFOs and extraterrestrials. That's something that everyone kind of wonders about, something that governments for sure have classified files on. In fact, I've thought occasionally about running for public office just so I could get my hands on those files and see once and for all what the government knows. But until that day, we can speculate based on what has been seen and heard. Now, in the Purple Streetlights video, I talk about government officials talking with aliens, and I used a screenshot from an NBC News article, so we'll start with that. The NBC News article headline is, "Former Israeli Space Security Chief Says Extraterrestrials Exist and Trump Knows About It." This article's from December 8th of 2020, so mentioning Trump is a little bit more relevant than it would be today. Haim Ashed is the former Space Security Chief of Israel, as well as the former head of the Israel's Defense Ministry's Space Division. According to him, not only do aliens exist, but we've been in contact with them. And not just by a few, but by what he calls a Galactic Federation. He went on to say that the unidentified flying objects have asked not to publish that they are here as humanity is not ready yet. The original article is in Hebrew and I don't speak Hebrew, but luckily Google Translate can translate a whole site for us. Link to the article will be in the description. The tag under the headline on the original article, which is an interview, includes the following. He claims that extraterrestrials from all over the universe are already walking among us. Encounters of the third kind are just around the corner and the Galactic Federation is delaying the release of information so as not to cause panic. Now he tells how the aliens prevented several nuclear holocausts, what's really going on at the mysterious farm in Utah, Skinwalker Ranch, which I've mentioned before, and when we can visit black holes. The prevention of the nuclear holocaust thing really stood out to me because there are currently, confirmed cases that are declassified by governments that say that that thing happens. Now, if there are declassified versions, there are obviously going to be classified versions as well. So what don't we know about? I'll name 2 times that nukes almost just wiped out planet Earth. There are also more declassified ones. There are probably a ton more classified ones that we just don't know about yet. But if we know about 2 unclassified ones, how many classified ones could there be? So there was the time that a Soviet system malfunctioned, and it said that there were nuclear bombs headed toward Moscow. However, the engineer who was looking at it said it makes no sense that the United States would only send 1 nuclear bomb. This has to be a glitch in the system. So instead of retaliating with all of their nukes, he just didn't do anything. He didn't tell anyone. Saved the world that day. Another time would be when a bomber, United States bomber, carrying nuclear weapons malfunctioned and dropped them in just the Midwest United States. Due to some miracle, 2 wires were crossed that should not have been, and they did not explode. Again, those are just 2 that we know of. So what about the ones we don't know of? Could there be an almost nuclear disaster every decade or so that we just don't know about? And the aliens are like, hey, I got your back, bro. Haim claims that once the extraterrestrials make their existence to the planet as a whole known, they will teach us everything that they know. Science will leap forward 1,000 years, we can start traveling through space and time, and galaxy jump. He said that this is right around the corner and believes that it will happen in his lifetime, and the dude's almost 90, so unless this man has powers to live a long time that he got from the aliens, it should be happening in the next couple years. Wikipedia has him listed as a conspiracy theorist, which honestly kind of makes me believe him even more. What really puts the nail in the coffin for me is that before he retired, not only was he, the head of the Ministry of Defense Space Agency for Israel, but he was one of the most respected and smart space researchers in Israel. He was also directly responsible for the planning and building of Israel's satellite program and the launch of the first Israeli satellite. He was also a pilot and was involved in the invention of the Israeli UAV program. So not only does he know a lot about space, but he knows a lot about air vehicles. Haim continues by saying that aliens kept him busy the last decade, even more so in the 2 years prior to retirement, with over 6,000 reports a year of UFO sightings. He then mentions the Omuamua object, which was discovered in 2017, and how Avi Leob claims that it was a UFO. Avi Leob is an astrophysicist at Harvard University and is no stranger to space. The name Omuamua is also a Hawaiian term that translates to scout, implying that it was a scout of some form of extraterrestrial life. It also had a weird flight pattern around the sun. It seemed unnatural. He also noted that former U.S. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid gave an interview and said to put pressure on the government to publish the evidence it has accumulated over the years. Enough is enough. Haim had kept quiet about this until Trump, kinda out of nowhere, established the Space Force, saying that we needed to be ready for space combat. At the time, it was mocked. However, the new president, Joe Biden, hasn't disbanded or repealed the Space Force, leading one to believe that it is in fact needed. Less publicized, but also happening around the same time as Space Force, the United States government established an Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force, which has a defense.gov website that you can find right now. Meanwhile, earlier this year, to almost no publication, at least not that I had seen or heard of until just now, NASA also set up an independent UAP task force, which Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. He then mentions Skinwalker Ranch, which is located here in my home state of Utah. He mentions the UFOs and the other paranormal events that happened there. Cows killed and drained of their blood with only 1 or 2 holes in their body. I'm not going to go into too much detail there because, as I've mentioned before and has actually been commented on my suggestions post, which you can go comment on if you have any suggestions for videos. I'm going to do a Skinwalker Ranch video in the future. However, I'm trying to see if I can set up some time with the owner of the ranch who I kind of know. Haim then says that if he had come forward earlier, while he was still working for the government, he would have been hospitalized, and only now does he feel safe to speak on the matter. He then says that US presidents know about the aliens, and he lists some examples. He said that Truman admitted that he saw a group of UFOs over Washington. Nixon showed his comedian friend Jackie Gleason an alien, which caused his depression. Eisenhower's granddaughter testified that her grandfather signed an agreement with the aliens that they could have a secret landing base at Area 51 in Nevada, that they could only talk to certain people and could conduct experiments in exchange for technologies. He goes on to mention anti-gravity in particular, saying that we already have anti-gravity technology thanks to the aliens. He continues on by saying that the Galactic Federation isn't in contact with all governments of the world, just the Americans, the Russians, the Japanese, the English, and the Chinese. They are forbidden from talking about aliens to the world as a whole, but are coordinating their communications with each other. He then said that Trump was originally going to blow the whistle on it, but he was eventually convinced not to. He then mentions that the aliens don't reveal themselves yet because humans are fickle creatures and they don't want to startle us or cause any disasters. It's actually on the contrary because, according to him, they want us to live and thrive. According to Haim, they monitor all the nuclear weapon stations and bases. He goes on to say that they've already prevented nuclear disasters, and it isn't just luck that nuclear weapons weren't used in the Bay of Pigs disaster. He likened it, actually, to a parent telling their bickering children to calm down. When asked why the aliens didn't contact anyone sooner, he said, quote, "They wanted to make us have some level of understanding first. They waited until today for humanity to develop and reach a stage where we would understand what space and spacecraft are. 100 years ago, we barely had airplanes, and they don't want mass hysteria to rise. Look at what happened in 1938 with Orson Welles' War of the Worlds radio broadcast." We're only about halfway through this article, and I'm really just like high level touch points. So if you are interested in reading the whole thing, again, link is in the description. When asked what interests the aliens have in us, Haim responded, "There are a lot of resources here. There is water here in quantities that are not found anywhere else. There is all types of vegetation, all types of animals, and the ocean." He then actually compared us to a petri dish, saying that while the aliens are much more intelligent and developed than us, they are still trying to understand the universe as a whole, and we here on Earth can help them. He then claims that COVID-19 slowed the Earth down, as that's not, everyone knows it did, and that brought us closer to the aliens. He said that the alien spaceship is the size of a small city, and that smaller ships come out of the mothership. The smaller ships are piloted by robots who will either be sent first before the aliens to contact us, or the aliens will send a coded message that we must decode before they reveal themselves, perhaps in the form of a recently seen purple streetlight phenomenon. He claims that the ship is neither gas nor nuclear propelled, but they actually have a method of producing a bubble that neutralizes space-time. He also claims that the ship doesn't move, but that the space moves around it, so it's kind of like the ship from Futurama. He says it follows the theory of general relativity, though, using an ant on a book as an example. He said pretty much that if an ant's on a book and it wants to get from the edge of one page to the edge of another, it can walk, or someone, or something, can bend the first page, dropping the ant off on the second. Boop. That's kind of how the bubble works. He continues by saying that the propulsion is complex physics and that it's based on dark energy. Since the universe is 25% dark matter, it makes it possible to distort space-time and reach other galaxies in no time at all. You can create a tiny black hole, which, in case you're curious, is already being done by the Hadron Collider in Switzerland, which you can then use to transport people and things. The interviewer then asked about the appearance of the aliens, and Haim said that they come in all kinds of shapes, and that some can even change shapes. He mentions that while objects are solid, the space between an atom's nucleus and its electrons are very far apart at its scale. As such, matter is vastly empty, and we can use that emptiness to our advantage. The interviewer at this time says something that I'm kind of inclined to agree with, actually, and you might be after you read the article as well, which is that he believes Haim, as he has no reason not to. He says that he's all in on Haim. The rest of the interview, they talk about humanity and the future of the world and the population and climate change, etc. So this is where we say goodbye and thank you to Dr. Haim Ashid. Now we make our way to Canada and Mr. Paul Hellyer. Paul, rest his soul, was a Canadian engineer, politician, author, and commentator. On June 3, 1967, he inaugurated a UFO landing site in Alberta. In September of 2005, he made headlines by announcing that he believed in the existence of UFOs. He said that he had seen a UFO one night with his late wife and some friends. In 2007, he demanded that world governments disclose alien tech that could be used to solve the problem of climate change. In an interview with Russia Today in 2014, he said that at least 4 species of alien have been visiting Earth for thousands of years, with most of them coming from other star systems, although some are living on Venus, Mars, and Saturn's moon. Now, I mentioned the UFO panel that the United States had a couple months ago, but it wasn't really anything big. They essentially believed that they weren't aliens, but they were a foreign technology that they see as a security threat, possibly from China or Russia. I included it because I know that if I didn't, someone would ask about it. Anyway, what's your thoughts on Haim Ashid? Do you think he's credible, or do you think he's a crazy conspiracy theorist? He has a lot of credentials and experience in the field of aviation and space, but it could still all be for publicity. What about Paul Hellyer? Dude was one of the longest serving Canadian politicians of all time. Whatever your opinions may be, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.